Welcome to episode 1 of J&A Sports Talk. I am Jacob Gacky alongside Alex Lynn, and we're both very excited for the premiere of what should be a very fun podcast. Before we get into our sports talk, I want to preface our favorite teams. Alex, how about you start us off with baseball?
Over here, I'm a big Boston Red Sox fan. How about you?
I'm a New York Yankee fan. When it comes to football, diehard Cowboys fans. That's probably our favorite sport to watch. And in the NHL, we both, favorite New York Rangers. And
pretty similar. We clash over baseball a bit, but we're pretty similar.
Pretty similar to the rest of that. All right, I think we should get right into it. Let's start off. Let's talk about fantasy football. We're both extreme fantasy football players, and we're both in an intense 16-man PPR league. Gets pretty heated. So let's start talking about guys we're eyeing. Alex, how about you start us off?
I'm going to have to go with David Johnson as my first one because David Johnson had a standout season in 2016. People forget that this guy dropped 400 fantasy points, which is the most by a running back since Priest Holmes years ago. I mean, this guy's an absolute stud. I mean, he did suffer last year. He did. He did not play well. And the offensive line hasn't gotten that much better. But people forget that a quarterback is a quarterback. And they added a big quarterback. They added Kyler Murray. They added 3 new wide receivers. They added Hakeem Butler, and they added new star slot wide receiver out of University of Massachusetts, Andy Isabella. He's going to open things up in the run game. David Johnson's going to have almost maybe 100 receptions this year. He's someone I'm really looking to. How about you?
No, just to go on with David Johnson, I certainly agree with that. A good guy that I expect a lot from in PPR leagues and in non-PPR leagues. He's been pretty vocal. Going out how he wants to be 1,000 yards on the ground, 1,000 yards in the air. And he hears all people talking about that he was just a fluke and just one season, 2016. And I completely agree with David Johnson. If there's I'm pretty high on a few wide receivers this year, starting off with Keenan Allen. I believe as certain elite quarterbacks get older, and I do believe Phillip Rivers is quite elite. They start to rely on specific players even more. You can see Tom Brady, with Julian Edelman. And I think as Matt Ryan keeps getting older, he's going to be relying to Julio Jones more. But with Phillip Rivers getting older, I think he's going to give Keenan Allen the ball more. The departure of Tyrell Williams, is only going to benefit Keenan Allen. I don't think it's going to hurt him. Obviously, certain people might bring up the fact that Hunter Henry's returning off of a torn ACL and he's coming back, and he'll certainly take receptions in that potent offense. But I'm still high on Keenan Allen, high reception guy. He's going to get touchdowns. It's in a very, very good offense. Great defense as well. I like taking fantasy players with great defenses because defense, take the other offense off the field. Their offense, Chargers offense going to come out there, firing. Between Gordon, between Keenan Allen, between Mike Williams and Hunter Henry, I think there's the ball can be spread between them all. Anyone else you're eyeing there, Alex?
One guy that I'm really high on this year, also another wide receiver, and these are guys that are very high on draft boards. It's not like we're telling you that they are going to be bust, they're not going to be great players, but when you're using a first or second round pick on these guys, you're expecting top tier production. And one guy that I expect top tier production from is Mike Evans. Mike Evans is a guy who, in draft, is going later than some of the top wide receivers. Obviously, he's not necessarily a tier 1 wide receiver, but he's going into tier 2s with guys like Amari Cooper, A.J. Green, Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen. However, I think he's going to be better than all these guys. The reason for this is because they finally got Bruce Arians. Bruce Arians is an amazing head coach, and as we'll get into later, I think he's going to turn the Buccaneers around as a whole team, aside from just the offense. But with the offense, he's a QB guru. This guy's going to turn Jameis Winston, and he's going to use him well. He's going to turn him into the weapon that he can be. Jameis has an arm, and people forget this guy's got an absolute cannon. He was the first overall pick. He's always thrown for tons of yards. He's had a turnover issue. So they're going to throw the ball to Mike Evans a lot. They don't have a consistent running back yet. I think Ronald Jones is a guy that may step up this year. We've talked in the past about Peyton Barber maybe being a guy that can fill in, but Mike Evans is just someone that's an absolute stud. He's one of the best wide receivers in the game. But he suffered because they don't have a great offensive coordinator. They never had a great line. And Winston just turns the ball over. I mean, think about it. Ryan Fitzpatrick was the starter there last year, which is absolutely bizarre that was even a thing, that Winston lost his job in the first place. But I mean, Mike Evans is a guy who, this year, if this offense solidifies and it becomes a Jameis Winston show, and they are actually consistent, which they haven't been in the past, Mike Evans is going to get tons of receptions. I mean, they got rid of Deshaun Jackson this year, right? They have Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin could be a stud. He could. But comparing Chris Godwin to Mike Evans is apples to oranges. They are not the same player, and Mike Evans is going to have a ton of receptions.
It's also important to note that Adam Humphries is out of that offense, and he was someone that was taking a lot of catches away from.
They love the slot there. They do
certainly. Another player I'm looking at, again, another wide receiver, another guy high on the draft boards, and he's in fact 10th on my overall PPR rankings, is Julio Jones. Like I said about Phillip Rivers, as soon as these top tier quarterbacks get older, I feel like they start relying on very fewer guys. They keep their circle small, and Julio, someone who I had in fantasy last year, and I traded for him when he wasn't getting touchdowns, and obviously I knew that the touchdowns were eventually going to come, and eventually it did come. And I believe it was Washington. He got his first touchdown last year. And I think the touchdowns are going to be there this year. It's going to be a more pass-heavy offense now. And I know I'm not too high on someone like Devontae Freeman, but we'll get into Devontae Freeman more later on in the show. But Austin Hooper, just a lot of players in that Atlanta offense. I'm very high on Calvin Ridley. Ball's going to be in the air a lot, and I believe Julio Jones is the best wide receiver in the NFL, and I believe he has that top 3 potential in fantasy this year. Although we're talking with guys like Hopkins and Adams, I still believe if I was drafting today, I might be taking Julio before some of those guys. Before guys like OBJ and maybe before players like Hopkins and Adams. I think we should get into sleepers and busts right now, unless you have another play that you want to mention.
No, I think it's good. I think for me, sleepers and busts, obviously, whenever you go on the internet, if you're researching fantasy, which I know if you're listening to this, you probably are for your leagues. Mm-hmm. We're excited, we're researching, and one thing you're always going to find is sleepers and busts. Everyone wants to give you their opinion on who's going to be the best, who's going to be the worst. But we want to do it based on ADP, which, if you don't know, is where someone's average draft position is. So, obviously, if Patrick Mahomes is being drafted 450th, we're going to take him, obviously. But if he's drafting first overall, maybe not. So, for me, 2 guys that I want to start with are Eric Ebron and Devontae Freeman. Both these guys are good players, and they will probably produce. However, I don't think they'll produce where they're being drafted. Devontae Freeman is being drafted in the mid-20s. He's someone that people are desperate for, and he's one of the next running backs available after you get out of your second tier. After guys like Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon are gone, you might have to end up with a guy like Devontae Freeman. Devontae Freeman missed time due to a multi-knee ligament sprain, aggravation of that injury, a foot sprain, and a groin tear. 2 years, all these injuries. I mean, he also has 3 concussions in the NFL, and every time he's had concussions, he had to leave the game. He's missed multiple weeks. Now, obviously, as you discussed before with Julio, who we're both high on, this is a pass-first offense now. It's changing. And Freeman is not going to get the ball like he used to in 2016, which we remember he was the number 1 fantasy running back. Or 2015, he was an absolute stud. So another guy that I'm also low on this year for where he's being drafted is Eric Ebron. And this is the reason. Jack Doyle is back. People forget about Jack Doyle. Jack Doyle was hurt all year last year. I think he had a hip injury. I'm not exactly sure. But when Doyle played, he outsnapped Ebron 331 to 164, which is almost double, and out-targeted him 33 to 22. Ebron averaged 4.4 targets per game when Doyle played versus 8.8 when he didn't. Now you're adding Devin Funchess and Paris Campbell, new Ohio State second-round pick, to this offense, and it is crowded. This is going to be a great offense, and we both know that when it comes to actual football, the Colts are going to be a great team with a great offense, a great offensive line. But I don't know if Eric Ebron's someone that you want to draft to be a tight end 1. I think Eric Ebron will still have solid production. He's still going to get touchdowns. He's still an end zone threat, and he's still one of those wide receiver prototype tight ends. But to draft him as your tight end 1, a top 5 tight end, for me, not this year.
No, I completely agree. And to piggyback on what you said, I'm quite high on Paris Campbell this year, an absolute flyer in that offense. And, there's no more questions, I think, about Andrew Luck. I think we're all familiar with what he can do now on the field. And, as long as he can stay healthy, those wide receivers are going to get the ball a lot in Indy. And Paris Campbell's an absolute flyer.
He ran 4.31.
4.31.
Absolute stud.
So he's going to be flying up, and it'll take some pressure off of Ty. And I agree with Eric Ebron. I don't know if people are going to get what they want from him this year. And we even saw other tight ends in that offense. Like Mo Alley Cox last year, getting the end zone taken
Great
away.
name.
Yeah, great football name. Taking touchdowns away from these other indie receivers and tight ends. A sleeper I have for this year is first one is D.D. Westbrook, and I really like D.D. Westbrook, and I just think we've seen what he's been able to do in Jacksonville with Blake Bortles, and now we are fully familiar with what Blake Bortles can't do. And now with the arrival of Nick Foles, a great quarterback, into that offense, he's going to get the ball. He's been open, and I can definitely see D.D. Westbrook, emerging as this, solid, viable fantasy wide receiver. Finally getting that solid quarterback. Getting the ball and being able to throw it deep. Another sleeper I have this year is Dante Foreman, and it's between Dante Foreman. People are talking about Dante Foreman and Lamar Miller, and Dante Foreman is a reason why I have Lamar Miller as a bust. It's hard to deny the fact that Houston hasn't been so confident in Lamar Miller. I've seen things online saying that Lamar Miller is trying to lose some weight, trying to become quicker running back. He's only getting older.
I mean, Foreman, don't forget, he almost took his job before
2
he tore
years
his
ago.
Achilles.
Achilles.
I remember in our league, Foreman was the biggest ad because this guy
was.
was going to be the new running back with Deshaun Watson, the stud QB. I mean,
100%. And he came back last year, and he was getting the ball. And in PPR leagues, he's gonna catch the ball, and I think he's gonna catch the ball more than Lamar Miller.
Lamar Miller's not gonna. I mean, Alfred Blue was out snapping Lamar Miller at points last year.
Lamar Miller's best days are behind him,
Absolutely.
and Dante Foreman, the former Texas running back, his prime is only ahead of him. Again, Alfred Blue, not too concerned about him in this offense. I think with Dante Foreman back, but for fantasy players considering taking Lamar Miller. It's definitely important to mention that Dante Foreman's going to be back. He's going to have a full, off season to recover from that injury, even though he did come back in the later stages of last season. His average ADP is around, I think, the 11th round, and that's late for a running back who might take the job early off in the season. I don't think he's going to have it week one, but I definitely think he can emerge. Any more sleepers or busts for Alex?
Yeah. For me, this is going to turn some heads, and I understand that people who are listening may not be too happy with this, but this is just obviously a bold prediction. Mm-hmm. Obviously, as you guys know, we're not, we're self-proclaimed experts. We know just as much as everyone else in the industry. So 3 guys that I'm going to say that I think are busts, and by no means do I mean they are not going to do well, but I mean for their ADP, where they're being drafted, value. I have Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, and Saquon Barkley. Yes, Saquon Barkley. Consensus first overall pick.
You're going to have to talk about that one more, Alex.
So first, I got Patrick Mahomes. And the reason I have Patrick Mahomes is because he is being drafted as the first overall quarterback, which he does deserve that. He had an excellent season last year. And if you subtract 6 touchdowns and hundreds of yards from his game, he was still the number 1 quarterback. He was it by 62 points, which is a lot for one position. However, no quarterback has ever repeated as the number 1 quarterback since Dante Culpepper in 1982. So I wouldn't count on it. I wouldn't. There's so many other good quarterbacks this year. People like to think that Mahomes just, so much more of a stud. You forget that Tyreek Hill, we don't know his suspension yet. It may be 2 games, it may be 10 games. We don't know. And that was his stud. I mean, it's just not going to be what it was. It was a magical season. He's a great player. He is. But I think you look for value. If you want to get a top-tier quarterback that early, wait another round or 2. Grab Andrew Luck. Grab Deshaun Watson. And I have the same thing with Aaron Rodgers, where Aaron Rodgers is being drafted as a top quarterback. And Aaron Rodgers will do great this year. However, there's one thing that people don't often look at, which is the players' schedules. Aaron Rodgers starts his season with Chicago, Minnesota, Denver, Philly, and Dallas. All of these are top 10 defenses ranked. Every single one of them. The Bears were, I think, the number 1 overall defense last year. Dallas finished in 3rd. Minnesota didn't have a great year, but we know how good they are on the backside. The Eagles are only getting better, and the Broncos have one of the best secondaries. They are a great team. So you go in, they're going to have to play all these teams in the beginning. I think you're better off waiting on Rodgers, maybe trading for him after these games. I think that he's definitely worth the roster spot. Obviously, he's going to be a number 1 QB.
Definitely.
But
definitely a good trade for Canada.
Right, exactly, mid-season. And then lastly, Saquon Barkley. I understand he's a great player. He's a first-round pick. I think there's an easy argument for him going first overall. However, the one reason why I think that people are a little too high on him is this. The other top consensus running backs, Melvin Gordon, who's on the lower side, Ezekiel Elliott, and Christian McCaffrey all have great offense. I mean, you have Cam Newton, which he's a good quarterback. You have Dak, which whatever you want to say, he's still a producing quarterback. He still does well. He wins games. He gets stats. And Phillip Rivers obviously throws the ball to Keenan Allen, as we were discussing before. Versus who's starting for the Giants? Is it Daniel Jones? Is it Eli Manning? We don't know. That line is still absolute garbage. I mean, it's worrisome.
No, and to interrupt you, I think that, I think Daniel Jones takes the job relatively early in the season.
Yes, I agree.
I don't think Eli's going to keep the job. And I think with Daniel Jones taking the job, that is going to hurt Saquon's fantasy value. I think, and that might be a bit of a hot take, but
I don't think so.
I don't think I think with Eli, it was just dumping the ball off. How many receptions did Saquon Barkley get last year? I don't know the number off the top of my head, but an exorbitant amount. And with Daniel Jones, he's gonna be able to run the ball. We saw him run the ball at Duke a little more. He's got some legs that can carry him. He's got an arm. He's hungry. He's gonna want to throw the ball to Golden Tate. Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram, and I completely agree. So keep going, Alex.
I mean, the one thing that I completely agree with you, and I think it's funny because you said is that he's going to want to throw the ball. Who's he throwing the ball to? I will read you their depth chart right now. It is Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard, Corey Coleman, and Benny Fowler. Benny Fowler should not necessarily even be on an NFL roster. Golden Tate is a good player. He's getting paid way too much money, which we don't need to go into, but he's a slot receiver. So is Sterling Shepard. I mean, you want to talk into me a perfect example of a running back who's a great running back, whether or not you think he is a great running back skill-wise, who's got a bad situation, a bad line, a bad quarterback. This is last year's David Johnson, someone that was drafted as the number 4 overall consensus last year. David Johnson, he was 4 on ADP, but yet he still had a bad year. Now, bad year, he was top 10. He finished as, I think, the 10th overall running back last year. So if you want to determine that bad, that's up to you. However, I know people who drafted David Johnson were unhappy. They had more expectations, obviously, right? Saquon was drafted later than David Johnson in most leagues. So to me, drafting someone who's going to have a poor offense, who's going to have a poor offensive line, they have no defense, how are they going to get the ball back? I mean, they're going to be playing from behind. There's just so many reasons why Barkley, we know he's a great player. I think we admit as Cowboys fans, Barkley could even be the best running back in the NFL. As hard as it is to say, but I don't know from a fantasy standpoint why he's so much better than a Zeke, where Zeke is, no matter how you're going to say it, after Amari Cooper came last year, he broke out. He went nuts. And they have a top line. Travis Frederick's back. They have Zach Martin. I mean, they got Amari Cooper. They have Michael Gallup. They have weapons. Zeke's going to get the ball more than Barkley is this year.
Yeah, and while we're talking about NFC East running backs, I want to talk about Darius Geis. And, a player last year that had a lot of buzz around him, going in 3rd, 4th rounds in fantasy drafts last year. And, his average draft position is around the 5th round this year. And I think that is still a little too high. I wouldn't be willing to take him until, around 7 or 8. Maybe to stay away from him completely. You said about playing from behind. I do think the Redskins aren't going to be a solid football team this year. People talk about Dwayne Haskins. It's going to take time with Dwayne Haskins. It's going to take time with that entire offense. And, I do like Darius Geis. I think he is a good running back. But, we saw Adrian Peterson resign. And we saw, the Redskins deciding to take Bryce Love out of Stanford. I just don't know about Darius Geis. And I think there are too many red flags with Darius.
Torn ACL, right?
Yeah, he had torn ACL.
He's risky.
He's going to be back. He's going to be back this year. He's in his 2nd year. And, I understand that he's young and all, but, there's a lot of running backs in that system. What do you think about Darius Geis, Alex?
I kind of completely agree. I mean, he worries me because Darius Geis was not a guy who got a lot of action last year. I mean, also, don't forget that they just drafted Bryce Love. Bryce Love also coming off a torn ACL. I'm not sure. I mean, I know we're a bit biased. But I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know the point at Bryce Love, who was a great running back last year. I mean, 2 years ago. Sorry, his junior year. Heisman finals. I don't remember if he won it. No, I don't think he did. He came in 2nd.
Yeah.
He was amazing. But Last year, he played before he got hurt, right? He was not good.
I think he lost to Baker to Heisman that year,
right? Yes, absolutely, yeah. But he wasn't good. He just wasn't good even when he was healthy. I mean, and for people who don't really watch college, these top running backs, these guys who were drafted as where he was, they're 100 a game.
Yeah,
I mean, 100,
easy.
150 a game, no problem. These guys are easy. And he was running for 70, 80 a game and getting 20 carries. 4 yards a carry, that is not
and a relatively easy division, too.
Right, Pac-12.
It's important to note. Just the running backs in Washington, I'm very hesitant to take them.
He didn't play one game.
No, he hasn't
He didn't play one regular season game. How are you going to say that he's a good running back?
He went down in the preseason. NFC East running backs this year, I think it's going to be a very interesting story. Jordan Howard, Miles Sanders at a Penn State rookie. People are quite high on him. Obviously you got Zeke and Saquon Barkley. So it's going to be interesting this year. When it comes to NFC East running backs. Now, I think now's a good time to shift gears away from fantasy football and just talk about football in general. And I think here on JNA Sports Talk, we're gonna just do a couple of divisions per week and just break them down and talk about who we think might impress us this year and who might win that division and who might disappoint us and fall in the bottom half of the division. So I think today we're going to talk about the AFC West. Great division. You got you have the Chiefs and you have the Chargers. And then also talk about the NFC North, a very hot division. A lot of predictions on that. So I think, Alex, let's start talking about the AFC West. Let's just go right into it. Who do you think is going to win that division?
I'm a bit biased, I will say, because as you know, I'm a huge University of Wisconsin fan, and Melvin Gordon was one of my favorite players. He's a Charger, but nevertheless, I do think the Chargers, I think we both agree, come out on top of this division because people are just so hyped about the Chiefs. I mean, people think that the Chiefs are one of the best teams in the NFL, which they are. They are a great team, but they didn't win the championship last year. They had one of their best possible seasons. Almost everything that went right for them. And all they did was they did gain Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu, which is a good add for the secondary. They did lose Justin Houston. They lost Kareem Hunt. We don't know how much Tyreek Hill is going to play. I mean, there's a lot of question marks, and the Chargers are only getting better. Keep in mind, the Chargers went 12-4 last year, or 11-5. I'm not sure. They won more than 10 games, which is really, really good. And the fact that they were in the division with the Chiefs and still won that many games it's crazy. I'm pretty sure they lost to the Patriots in the playoffs, right? So they lost to the champions. Okay, so just to start, that's not the worst thing in the world. You lose to the champions. They have Phillip Rivers, who we both agree is a good quarterback, a bit underrated. We think he's good. They have Melvin Gordon. They have a good line. They didn't have the guy, Forrest Lamp. They drafted him the second round 2 years ago. He's back. He was hurt. Their all lines only getting better. I mean, they're a good team. You were talking about Keenan Allen, and their defense, which we agree you can go in, is just an absolute great group.
Yeah, I know, might be thinking about how there's still two other teams in that division, Oakland Raiders and the Broncos. Unfortunately, the Raiders aren't going to do a damn thing, I don't think, in that division. They still got a lot to do before they can be a successful team in that division. Broncos,
a little bit better.
Broncos are better. They decided to take Drew Lock out of Missouri.
Which won't help them this year.
No, definitely not. I don't know if he's the answer. Only time will tell. But at the reins right now, it looks like Joe Flacco, who is a Super Bowl winner, but again, his
Eli Manning.
Yeah, so. His heydays are behind him. So I'm not thinking they're going to be competitive. Those two teams, Oakland, Denver, in that AFC West division. And I agree. I think the Chargers are going to take this division. I think it's going to be very, very close. And I think whoever doesn't win this division is going to be contesting for that wild card spot.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about the AFC North. I know we differ here on who we think is going to win, and I'm too hesitant to pick the Browns. And I know people are all over the Browns hype with trading for OBJ. They decided to take DeAndre Baker. They in the second round. They're a very promising team, very young nucleus with Baker, Jarvis, and OBJ on offense. Nick Chubb, fantastic running back, Georgia alum. And I'm too hesitant to pick the Browns, and I still think it is the Steelers division.
Still have them.
Yeah, I'm still gonna roll with the Steelers, and I don't love Big Ben, but I think he is, he's still got a little gas left in the tank, and that might be an unpopular opinion. The departure of Antonio Brown, I think, it's a tough loss. One of the best wide receivers in the game, but I'm still gonna pick this.
Do you think Juju fills AB's footsteps?
I don't think he needs to. For people who like Pro Football Focus, one of the most underrated players they had in the draft was Toledo wide receiver Deontay Johnson. And from what I've heard, this kid is the real deal. He's going on that offense. Very similar player to Deontay Johnson, to AB Deontay Johnson is. But, of course, I'm not saying Johnson is going to be Antonio Brown. But, they have lots of wide receivers in that.
James Washington.
James Washington.
I was super high on him last year. Didn't do anything.
Ryan Switzer, former Cowboy.
Oh.
I don't know what he's going to do. They decided to take Benny Snell also on this draft, which was, an interesting pick that I was not expecting. I think that offense is still going to produce. Whether the defense is going to hold up is another question. They decided to move on up in that first round and take linebacker Devin Bush from Michigan. A slightly undersized, player, but definitely has got that fight in him. So I really look forward to this division. Talk about the Ravens for a little. What do you think about the Ravens?
I mean, for me, the Ravens are a good team, and they will contend.
Mm-hmm.
As you went over, I'm that guy. I'm a Browns guy. I think the Browns have this division. The reason why I don't think the Ravens are going to be contending is because even though they still have a great defense, which they do, they had one of the top defenses last year. I mean, they were great, but they lost pieces. They lost guys to the Packers. They did sign Earl Thomas, so I have to give them that. That was a good signing. However, we were hoping to get him here in Dallas, but we don't know how he's going to produce, and I just don't know whether that offense is going to be good. We've discussed if Lamar Jackson's going to be good, and really, it's not for us to discuss. It's to see, because we did well. He made the playoffs, and you can't argue that he is a playoff quarterback because they won games. However, in the playoffs, he looked really bad. I mean, that was difficult to watch him play, which is why, for me, it's the Browns. And for me, it's the Browns because Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's a great quarterback. As you said, they have Nick Chubb, they have Jarvis Landry.
David Njoku in that offense.
Right. I mean,
very great talent.
They have a good line, which we've discussed before. And they have a great defense, which people do not remember. I mean, they have Denzel Ward, who played really well last year. They have Demarius Randall, Morgan Burnett, Christian Kirksey. Joe Schobert led the league in tackles a couple years ago.
Yeah,
Olivier Vernon and Myles Garrett are a great duo. So I really think, even though they are a bit high, right, we got to see. Because we've discussed that.
It's still the Browns.
We don't know.
It's still the Cleveland Browns at the end of the day, and that's why I picked. I might be a little rude, but I am still hesitant to pick the Browns.
I have questions with the Steelers on defense. That's why for me, and offense. I mean, they're a good team. They're still an overall good team, but Big Ben did not look that great late in the season. He's still a good quarterback. We know that, but I don't know how much you were saying. You think he has a bit left? I don't know how much he's got left. And personally, I'm not a James Conner fan, so I think that he's going to have trouble running the ball.
No, that's
great line though.
Great line. And again, Le'Veon's out of there, and I hope he does well with the Jets. Let's shift gears to an entirely different sport. Let's start talking about the MLB with the All-Star Game coming up. A very fun weekend to watch. I just saw that Pistol Pete Alonso has agreed to go into the MLB home run derby. I know Vlad Guerrero Jr. is in it too, so it should be exciting. Two rookies are going to be.
Should be fun, and usually these players opt out, which people forget that these big time names don't always go in. But this year it's nice that they're in.
To do it.
Right.
That's
JD also declined to do it.
It's in Cleveland this year, so it should be a lot of fun. But let's start talking about players selected. Some snubs. The MLB All-Star Weekend is a very controversial, just game itself with players being selected. Players like Anthony Rendon being left out of the All-Star game. I know you're a huge fan of his.
He is on my MLB. He's on my fantasy team, so I'm a fan. To me, it's ridiculous that I understand that fan voting makes it fun, and it does. And we both voted. I voted for Mookie Betts, JD Martinez. I know he voted for Luke Voigt and Gio Urshela. He votes for his players. I vote for mine. Right. However, for this reason is why it's ruined. You look at the NL outfielders. There are some great names in the NL, and yet Kyle Schwarber, Albert Almora, and who's the other Cubs outfielder? I can't remember. They also, who was it?
Jason Hayward.
Jason Hayward, right. Jason Hayward. Those 3 guys were top 9 finalists. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm not gonna say they suck because they're not, but you also have guys where Nolan Arenado's great, and I'm glad that he won because he's deserving. However, the fact that Josh Donaldson was a finalist and Anthony Rendon wasn't it's abysmal. I mean, Anthony Rendon's batting .307 with 17 home runs, 55 RBIs, and 60 runs. This guy's an absolute stud. He's going into a contract year. He's going to make an absolute bang. I mean, I know, Jacob, what do you think about Charlie Blackmon? I know you're a big fan.
Yeah, I like Charlie Blackmon. I've always been a fan of his. One of my favorite non-Yankee players in MLB. He's not in it. He got denied for, good baseball players, with Bellinger, Yelich, and Acuna taking the starting, roles in that NL outfield. It's tough to knock out those guys, but I mean, it's hard to deny what Blackmon has done. A little bit of a sluggish start to this campaign, but you're looking at his stats now. He's batting .330, 58 runs scored, 18 homers, 51 RBIs,
and he missed time too.
He missed time. He was on the IL. It is now for several weeks, and he's been on a tear recently. So he's not starting, but obviously in place for very, very good baseball players. Looking at the players that were chosen, Ketel Marte and Mike Moustakas are, fighting for that second base, and I think it's hard to take that away from Ketel Marte. What do you think?
I think Marte, absolute stud. I mean, I don't know on top of his head, but his numbers are crazy good. I mean, he's an absolute stud this year, and he came out of nowhere. It wasn't like he was expected to do well. I mean, that team in general. I mean, Eduardo Escobar, also another player who's really showed up this year.
Rookie Christian Walker has shown out this year with a pretty powerful bat.
Mm-hmm.
No, I agree. Marte's just come on the scene this year, just really taking the league by storm. So I hope he get that starting role, but you never know. And Jorge Polanco in a very tight race. So with Xander. So talk about your Red Sox.
And
here.
I will say I am disappointed because Xander Bogaerts is having an absolute year. This guy is the best AL shortstop. You cannot tell me otherwise. He's batting .298 with 15 homers, 55 RBIs, and 61 runs scored. He hits for average. And if you know the Red Sox, he hits in the clutch. He is playing well. Polanco's having a great year, and I'm not going to take that away from him. But I think the fact that Bogaerts wasn't a finalist is disgusting to me. I mean, Gleyber's a good player. Gleyber's a great player. But for me, Gleyber's having a good year, but Bogaerts is having a great year. And obviously, I'm a little biased with Mookie Betts. Obviously, also, JD Martinez also didn't get voted in. But one guy I want to capitalize on who is not a Red Sox, I personally believe that Mookie Betts did enough. I know he's slacking to get the 3rd spot. But one guy for me that definitely deserves it is Joey Gallo.
Yeah.
We agree. Joey Gallo is a stud. I mean, he was good last year. He hit 50-plus home runs, I believe, 49 maybe.
Strikeout king.
Strikeout king.
Downfall.
But he is back. He figured it out. I don't know what he did, but whoever that hitting coach is deserves a payday because he's batting .280.
Bannister, I think Bannister's still the man.
Right. 19 home runs, 44 RBIs. He's batting .280. I mean, this guy has finally figured out his strikeout problem. So concerned that he's missed time. He's still got 19 homers. Keep in mind, he's playing on the Rangers. I mean, they're a good team, but they're almost 500. I got to give them that, but they're not as good as the Astros, the Red Sox.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a guy who's playing on a worse team. He's figured out his strikeout woes. He's an above average fielder. I don't see a reason why he doesn't deserve to be in over a guy like Michael Brantley. Springer's great, but Springer hasn't been playing for almost a month now.
Yeah, he had a great start to the year.
Judge, oh my God! I mean, we agree that Judge. The fact that Judge finished 4th in voting.
Aaron Judge got lots of votes, and it's just it's teams like the Cubs, the Yankees,
the Braves.
Right. They're getting a lot of votes, a big support. Where players like Ketel Marte, who's is a D-back, not insane amount of support down there in Arizona.
I mean, Tampa Bay is one where we agree. I mean, it's a huge discussion these days whether they move, which we could get into later, but do they move to Montreal? Do they stay in Tampa Bay? We don't know. The fact that that's even in discussion really tells you that their fans are lacking. I mean, they get less than 10,000 fans at games, and they're a great team.
Yeah.
They're in a division with the Boston Red Sox, reigning world champs, and the New York Yankees, 27-time world champs. They are leading. The Yankees are a great team. The Red Sox, they're slacking. They're a good team, and they are right in there.
Yeah.
The fact that the Rays are in such a good division, they have such a good team, they have a great farm system, and yet no one shows up to their games is terrible.
They don't get enough credit, and the manager there in Tampa Bay did such a fantastic job. I mean, they lost, I think, last year, before the start of last year, they lost 3 of their best 4 hitters.
everyone. Chris
Yeah.
Archer too went in a trade.
Yeah, I mean, but hey, that Chris Archer trade, maybe one of the best trades I've seen in a while in baseball. They received Tyler Glasnow and Austin Meadows, who, has been a
Raking.
fantastic outfielder this year for Tampa Bay. Has performed on, all levels, been able to steal bases, and, they got Tommy Pham from St. Louis,
right.
which, we knew he was a good player, but absolutely fantastic outfielder this year.
And he was really good 2 years ago, where people thought that he was almost. I remember going into last year, he was an MVP candidate.
Right.
People had him on the odds, but he didn't play great. He played well, and then he went to Tampa Bay, and he's playing great. He's got great numbers this year. I mean, he's got good numbers, good enough. I mean, not to be an all-star, but he's hovering around there. Meadows is definitely around there. Meadows has been cold, but he's a great hitter. I mean, the fact is that we both admit, even though we don't like them, the Rays deserve credit, and they don't get it.
Before we finish off the episode, let's choose our starting pitchers for the AL and for the NL, and then we'll finish off the episode. So let's go to the NL. Who do you think should start for the NL?
Well, it's tough. It is, because you only get one pitcher, which is really tough. I mean, in past, I think it's been Scherzer for 3 years now.
I think it's hard to take it away from Hyun-Jin Ryu in Los Angeles.
It's tough because one guy, I'm not sure. It's really tough. I think that 3 guys that I would say keep your eye on. I think Hyun-Jin Ryu has got to be up there. I think Walker Buehler's got to be up there. Luis Castillo's a guy that's having a great year, even though he doesn't get a lot of credit. I mean, Steven Strasburg has been playing great. I think Max Scherzer 7-5 with a 2.5 ERA. It's great numbers.
Yeah, 5 losses is kind of tough with that.
I'd say, you know what? I think I'll have to agree. Hyun-Jin Ryu, he's 9-1 with a 1.27 ERA.
Yeah.
The only thing about him is he does give up a lot of hits, which is kind of weird for a pitcher who's so dominant, where he's going to have 7-8 hits almost sometimes in a game and still give up no runs. Kind of strange, honestly. We don't really see that, but he still has a 1.27 ERA and he's still 9-1. So
yeah, if I had to choose a pitcher, it would be him. He, he's been great and an absolute fantastic story in Los Angeles with those pitchers with Walker Buehler, Kershaw, and Rich Hill's on the IL, but he was fantastic. Absolute fantastic starting rotation they have there in Los Angeles. But nevertheless, AL starting pitcher, I'd give it to Verlander. Just who would have thought he was going to keep up what he's been doing these last few years, and the trade to Houston. Who knew that he was going to be just as dominant? And it looks like he's never been so dominant in his career. So
2.75 ERA, which is, I mean, that's an excellent number.
Absolute
He strikes out tons of batters, and he also, people forget, he goes length. I mean, his last 5 outings, he went 7-7, 6 1/3, 8 7. He doesn't give up. He's 30. I think he's 35 now, and he just keeps going.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much, Alex, for this. It's gonna be a lot of fun recording these.
We hope to keep giving you guys some more episodes soon.
Certainly. We will see you guys next time. Thank you very much.